Welcome to the press conference today. Sorry, the speaker is not using a microphone. You can use the simultaneous interpretation service. Please put on the earpiece. The Committee on Members' Interest earlier received complaints, i.e. in April, we received 2 complaints against the Honorable Mr. Michael Tian and Dr. Lau Wong-Fat. These 2 cases involved offshore companies. And that is to say, members being subject of the complaint were involved in the investment in offshore companies, and the committee launched investigation in relation to the complaints against them. And upon preliminary investigation, today we formally submitted our report to the Council. And you should now have a copy of the report at hand, and it sets out the details of the investigation. I don't wish to repeat the content of the report, so I'll see if you have questions on the report. Now, Deputy Chair reminded me to reiterate the conclusions of our investigation. In relation to Mr. Michael Tian, the subject of the complaint is that he is a remunerated director of a company, GPL, and that the complaint is not substantiated because according to information, he is not a remunerated director. In relation to the shareholding interest not being registered, the complaint is substantiated because he holds 50% of the shares of the company in Wood. And for a holding of shares exceeding 1%, he is required to register his interest, and he is therefore in breach of Lettrell's requirement. However, we also note that this company is incorporated for the purpose of holding the membership of a golf club. So, in relation to the first allegation, and that is to say we do not find that there is any direct conflict of interest in his position as a Lettrell member. As for deliberately covering up his relations with the company, we note that earlier he also registered and declared his interest with the Tsuen Wan District Council. So we find that he did not deliberately cover up in breach of our requirement. So the decision of the committee is that the complaint is not substantiated. As for Mr. Lau Wong-Fat, the subject of the complaint is that he is the non-executive director. I beg your pardon, remunerated directors of 3 offshore companies, and he also holds some shares. But according to our investigation, that is in relation to him being the remunerated directors, we find the complaint not substantiated because he is not the remunerated director of these 3 offshore companies. In relation to his holding of shares, he did register his interest, and he even registered his interest months before the shares were held. And he declared very clearly that he owned shares of more than 1% of some companies. And once the companies ceased operation, within 14 days, he already made this declaration with the committee that he no longer owned the shares. So he has complied with the registration requirement. However, even before he actually owned the shares of the company, he already made this declaration. And we would like to remind him that this is inappropriate because we should accurately declare the interest so as to avoid conflicts of interest, and it should be available for public inspection. So according to our report, our conclusion is to remind all members to make accurate declarations, and that's more or less the content of the report. Questions? SCMP, Tony. We have two cases this time. As a non-remunerated director, he is not required to make a declaration. And if you cannot prove that this is deliberate, even if he is in breach of the requirement, there will not be any follow-up action. So is this a loophole that should be plugged? Because the public may feel that although he may not be a remunerated director, he is still acting in the capacity of a director. So can you explain a bit further? This involves an amendment to our rules of procedure, because these are the requirements laid down in our rules of procedure as to whether there is no need to register the interest as a remunerated director, as a non-remunerated director, as there is no interest involved, and that he is not remunerated. I guess that's the rationale of the ROP. As for sanctioning, we have decided not to impose any sanction on the member because we believe that he did not do so deliberately. But it doesn't mean that we must not impose any sanction. But it's, in the end of the day, up to the council to decide whether to impose any penalty. For the CMI, our duty is to submit a report and make recommendation to the council. If we propose any penalty, I think we should be accountable to the public. We should make a public statement, and so as to make it fair and impartial. Now, your first question was on non-remunerated directorship. And this has all along been our practice for many years. It's also set out in the ROP, and as mentioned by Chairman, it has to do with whether interests are involved. If you're remunerated, of course, there are interests involved. If otherwise, there is no need to register the interest. Now, you mentioned whether we can do anything about the breach. It's not true that we are helpless, because in relation to Rule 85 of the ROP, sanctions can be imposed for matters involving personal interest. The member can be reprimanded, his duties can be suspended, so on and so forth. However, if we do make such recommendations, a motion will have to be moved at the council, followed by a debate and voting procedure. So it's not the case that we cannot penalize the member.
Any other questions?
Mr. Teen, why recommend no sanctions whatsoever, considering that he held those shares since 1997, and this is a 50% holding, which is far above the threshold? And secondly...
one at a time, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I think our view is that although he has made a mistake, and he admitted it, but because A, it's not deliberate, I think he made the declaration to a district council, and it has really no conflict of interest. So because that company only holds something that has nothing to do with electrical work or, Hong Kong affairs. So we decided. And I don't think this is the first time. In the past, if members have made such transgression, but if it is not deliberate, and if it does not really involve any conflict of interest, then we will not initiate any punishment. But of course, we certainly hope members will be careful and will not do it.
Okay.
The second question?
Yeah, second question. In paragraph 313...
Of what? Of the report?
Of the report. You mentioned that Mr. Lau Wong Fat was declaring even before his
Yes.
shareholding. Is there a need maybe to amend the ROP then to make it less confusing perhaps, or just have people declare all their interests regardless of how
Well,
much
I
they hold?
think the rules are very clear. You only declare something when it's there. If you declare something which is not there, then you are confusing the public. Because when people come to LegCo, to the register, when they read it, they expect all that to be true. When you make a declaration, when in fact you don't own those shares, it is inaccurate. So we think that is not something that we want to encourage. But again, there's no conflict or anything, but it is just not very good. And I don't think we need to amend the rules because the rules are very clear. You only declare what you hold. If you declare something that you don't hold, it is not in line with the rules. But we do not think it is such a serious matter. So we, of course, will tell him that he shouldn't do it. And members, all other members, should not do this too. Hi, Gopin.
Yes. I'm Chris from Ming Pao. Question regarding Mr. Lau Wong Fat. There is a report that he actually holds a British citizenship, although he has denied that. So, could you say that did the committee, investigate whether that's true? So, is there any mechanism to check whether or not he owns British nationality? Regarding questions on nationality, if there is a complaint, of course we would investigate. But so far we have not received any such complaints. The work of the CMI is such that we will not proactively investigate into the information pertaining to members. The work of the CMI is to conduct investigation pursuant to the rules of procedures. So we cannot go beyond that. If there is any complaint, we will look into the complaints. And in the course of doing that, if it involves the declaration of interest, then we will deal with such complaints. So far, we have not received any such complaints which you referred to. Well, our terms of reference is very clear. Our duty is to look into the interests of members. Of course, you can say that nationality is also an interest, but it's not stated in the rules. The basic law, however, is very clear. It would allow some members who are represent a functional constituency to hold a foreign nationality, but it also stipulates, which particular functional constituency. So if a member of the public feels that a certain member has, breached our rules or even the basic law, of course, they can complain to the Legislative Council or even to the administration, because this is a serious allegation. I think if anyone were to stand for election, they would need to make a declaration. I don't represent any functional constituency, but I believe that if you were, you would need to declare that you don't hold any foreign nationality unless your functional constituency allows that. So I believe this is a very serious business, but it's beyond the terms of reference for CMI. So I don't think we can answer your question, because we've not conducted such investigation. But if anybody should have any doubts that the basic law is being breached, then this would be a serious allegation, and he or she would need to take this up with the administration or the secretariat of LegCo. I wouldn't say that definitely we cannot investigate into such complaints. But there must be a complaint first before our committee will consider whether we will look into that. Basically, we are dealing with declaration of interest by members. So as to whether what you refer to as true, I think we would only conduct investigation if there is a complaint. So we can't answer your question since there is no such complaints. So I think we only have a week or so before our session will end. So if you have such information, you can certainly write to our Secretariat or our President or our Secretary General, TVB. The committee does not recommend taking any action. Does it mean that there won't be any further sanctions if nobody wants to follow up on this further. And secondly, Mr. Lau made the declaration 7 months well in advance. So if so does it mean that a member should only declare his interest when he becomes the director of a company? Why did he make the declaration 7 months in advance? Well, he actually made the declaration ahead of time. So this is the declaration he made. If he made a declaration, then we will not challenge that. But in our report, we are reminding him that the declaration should be accurate and he shouldn't, declare everything before it's confirmed. Perhaps Mr. Lau Wong Fat had a previous experience which is still very much on his mind. So perhaps he was worried that there might be an oversight, so he declared it anyway. But suddenly, one cannot say that he has breached the rule regarding registration. Would there be any follow-up? Why we not follow up on the complaint? Well, in respect of this complaint against Mr. Lau, and after the committee has made its decision, there won't be any further follow-up action unless there is another fresh complaint involving new information. If you have another complaint involving the same information, we will not follow up on that any further. That's about it, right? Thank you very much. Otherwise, the council meeting may abort. We need to go back.